Yes, well, I really appreciate your truthfulness. I think that one of the reasons I enjoy connecting with people like you is because it's much easier for me to just feel my heart open to what you've been through. And
Yeah.
um, it's not exactly instead of feeling empathy for myself, it actually helps me feel it for myself, but it's kind of a safe way into it. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And I just going back to wanting to be so far, far from that child I was, um, the intensity of wanting to not know her vulnerability was such that I was willing to write myself off as a complete failure as a human being
Mhm.
rather than feel her vulnerability. I just wanted to point that out again. The intensity, like the feeling of being a failure is so terrible as an adult, but it was somehow better than
Yeah.
feeling that utter terror and helplessness and
Yeah.
hopelessness of the child.
Well, it puts you more in the driver's seat when you say, oh,
Yes.
well, I'm just either a bad person or I'm not successful or I'm, whatever it is, because you're owning that, even though it's
Mhm.
not really yours,
Yeah.
rather than saying, no, this was a bad thing that happened. And it's only natural that I should feel these feelings. Um, but they're not really mine. I've taken them from that person and
Mm.
on me.
Mm.
And so many of us who have had these experiences do that. We take it on ourselves rather than saying, well, that teacher did it, or that stepfather did it, or that priest did it, or, yeah, we don't
Mhm.
want to feel those helpless feelings.
Right. Yeah, I think it's also interesting then we absorb um, the shame of the perpetrator.
Yes.
And we, one of the things that makes me most boiling mad in discussions about abuse is when someone kindly says, well, can you imagine what it was like for him? This happened in the case with the band teacher with Anne Marie.
Mhm.
She went to a friend to say, do you remember those days when we were in high school together and the way the band teacher favored me? And it's not going to be true in a case of a 9-year-old and a pedophile, but it
Right.
is the case still with teenagers and
Right.
pedophiles. There's
Yeah.
still so much shame and blame placed on the person.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
See it from his perspective, like you were, coming on to him, you were enjoying the attention or whatever they might say.
Well,
And
interestingly, there's a case right now in the Calgary courts against the Calgary Board of Education about what happened in a junior high right near where I live. For 20 years, one of the teachers was doing what I call the boyfriend scam
oh,
on the 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls in his care. And he also molested boys, but most of his attention was on the girls. And it's going to explode here. The group of 14 who are suing the board are asking for $40 million. Absolutely, they should get that.
oh,
But
yeah,
also it's going to be such an explosive thing that people better pay attention. I
right.
I hope it means big changes in the
Yes.
way
Yeah.
schools deal with these things.
Well, it's addressing the enabling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
wonderful.
And the principal and the vice principal and most of the teachers knew, and nothing substantive was ever done. So
So that is going to be really interesting to watch how
it
that
is. If
unfolds.
you Google John Ware School Calgary
Oh, yes.
court case
Yeah,
or abuse.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so where you took over from what I was saying. I'm just wondering if you've read about that the excuses made when in the case of teenagers, especially teenage girls,
Yeah.
were there disclosures over the years, all treated with basically you liked it kind of.
Well, I've only read the article in, I think it made the newspaper here, but also Maclean's magazine. An investigative reporter did a very, very good job interviewing the girls that are now women
Mhm,
and getting things from their point of view about how they feel. So it was done in a very sensitive way. So there were no accusations or whatever. However, I know that some of the people involved in the hierarchy of the school have been heard to say, oh, you know, girls at that age, they all dress in such a slutty manner,
mhm,
or they are all coming on to the teachers as though, first of all, they may not have at all, but that's how onlookers view it.
mhm,
That, oh, you know, 15-year-old girls, they're all,
mhm,
as though a 13, 14, and 15-year-old girl is equal to an adult male who's
mhm,
preying on them. And
mhm.
she should have known not to flirt with that guy, or, in other words, putting it all on the survivors, the victims,
Yes.
and blaming the girls.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
it's a
so
special, it's almost its own category. And I know we were talking before about, what is worse and what is more mild. It's hard to say. It's impossible
yeah,
to say because it's case by case. But the thought of a girl's just just flowering identity, or a boy too, but often the girls, this identity that is opening up into to becoming a sexual adult person, and it's a very gradual, very sensitive time of life that should be
yeah,
most protected. That's when that, because it's such a difficult journey actually into adulthood.
it is absolutely.
I feel a special kind of rage towards people who take advantage of that time of life.
Yeah. Well, as I say, they use what appeals to young girls at that age. They, the predators that, and it was two in this particular school. The one man committed suicide right after he was charged, but the other one is still alive. And I really call it the boyfriend scam on purpose, because they act towards the girl in a way that a boyfriend might. And the girl is, as you say, just coming into her own um, young adulthood. She's vulnerable to romance and, fantasy romance. And
Yeah,
then somebody comes along and uses that
yeah.
against them. Yeah.
And you're reminding me that in the case of sex trafficking, there's a
Oh,
common image of a girl being chained and locked in a room,
yeah.
but in fact, all of those chains and the locks have to do with emotional control.
Yeah.
And, supposedly that woman is free to go at any time, but there's been
Oh, no, they're not.
oh yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah.
been a more, it's tighter. It's the tightest bond at all of all is to control someone emotionally.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of different categories, of course, with young girls. Some of them, when I was in England, this was a big thing for the predators to go down to the main bus stations and watch to see young girls get off the bus without any companion, looking a little bewildered, not looking as though they know where they're going.
Mm.
And they become victims of men who are looking for moneymakers. So they approach them. They act like they're being friendly. Oh, I can find you a place to stay. Don't worry. I'll look after everything. I know the city. And pretty soon they have established a sexual relationship with this man. And then he says, but we need money to keep going. So you're going to have to satisfy these other men, but I'll always be there for you. I'm your boyfriend. You're my girlfriend. But these other men are necessary for money. And besides, they might give them drugs. So that's that's another of the so-called boyfriend scams that link a girl in, tie a girl in to a situation where she's just being used. But then there's the other ones who simply, how can I put this? Treat girls as products. They are taken across Canada. They taken away from their home city, bused or driven to Manitoba or Ontario or wherever where they know no one. And they're put in a locked room and told they have to do this.
So there is that as well.
Pardon?
Well, there is that as well.
Yeah, there's both situations.
Right.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of there's some famous quote about the way to destroy a nation is to take away their history. And there are so many ways our stories, our histories are negated. What you were just describing of taking someone away from their family, out of the part of the world they know, and
Yes.
erasing the past,
Yeah.
making someone so vulnerable.
Yes.